Thank you. Welcome to the Unitarian Church in Fall River, where we think religious questions are important, but we want to work out our own answers, where we gather to share ideas and support one another. Fire isn't really a thing, it's an event. It's an event. And it's what distinguishes us from other animals, right? We get to control this, to use this. And there are fires everywhere. There's a fire on the other side of this wall that may not be going right now, but goes off and on to make hot water for the building. And unless you have an electric car, there's a fire under the hood of your car. If you do have an electric car, there's a fire in a power plant somewhere that's making electricity. We gather this hour as people of faith, having sorrows and joys and needs and gifts. We'd like to speak in our hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning and in celebration of the life we share together. In the order of service, there's a note I wrote to Nancy that wasn't really supposed to be printed in the order of service. And I'm not trying to cause a lot of confusion here by changing things, but we're singing 7. All you have to do is look at 7. Just ignore the notes.
Don't look at the notes.
Just look at the words, because I know the guy who wrote the words, and he wrote this hymn for a completely different tune, which is what we're actually going to play. But it'll fit.
I needed you to try it, so we confirmed that it works.
Yeah. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. Helen Cohen was the minister in Lexington, Mass for a long time. And I knew her somewhat, and it was her husband, Don Cohen, who wrote the words to this hymn. And he was really upset that the people who compiled the hymnal decided to put it to different music. So I pledged to him that I would always, that I loved it, but I would always try to have people accept the music for which it was written. Are there announcements, other announcements?
Yes. The Course in Miracles continues to be a miracle. We're now at 30 countries, and our base is 400 participants across the world. And we had on Facebook Live 38 people watching as we present. But I think one of the nice things about this program that Richard is one of our participants, does, and Al Berger, is that we are not out coaching the Course in Miracles in the dogmatic way. I think that was,
It's really an excuse for us to talk about heretical ideas.
there you go.
Kit usually says who the guest preacher is the following week. And Kit's not here, and Eric disappeared somewhere.
I don't, do you remember? No. Someone will be here. Someone that's been here before, I think.
Yeah.
You know, someone who's familiar to us. But I'm sorry, I don't know who. Are there other announcements?
Maybe.
Well, I'll tell you, multitudes today have something to do with food. Some of them are pretty obscure, so you get surprised what you do.
Surprise.
I'll stop playing.
Eric, do you know who the guest preacher is next week?
I do. Next week is Paul Sprecher.
Oh, Paul Sprecher.
Paul Sprecher.
Oh, so some of you have never seen him because he hasn't been here since last year. But yeah. Yeah, he was the minister in Bridgewater for a long time and now he's retired. For an invocation, this is part of a poem by E.E. Cummings that I just love. I thank you, God, for most this amazing day, for the leaping greenly spirits of trees and the blue true dream of sky, and for everything which is natural, which is infinite, which is yes. I who have died am alive again today, and this is the sun's birthday. This is the birthday of life and of love and wings and of the gay, great, happening, illimitably earth. Now the ears of my ears awake, and now the eyes of my eyes are opened. I have a short meditation by Mary Fagan. It's called, I Am a Millions of Years Old Wonder. And she's talking about herself. I am a millions of years old wonder. I am an international, no, a cosmic treasure. I ought to be safeguarded in a museum somewhere, like Paganini's old violin. I ought to be gasped at, talked about in hushed, amazed, reverential tones. Viewers would touch me gently and feel lucky. Daily newspaper headlines could say, Mary Fagan exists today. Radio and TV shows could discuss me, my ordinary events. That I saw a bluebird with my millions of years old eyes, and I heard it sing with my highly advanced evolutionary ears, and that my graceful hands with opposable thumbs fed my sensitive mouth delicious strawberries that it tasted. Then, without a conscious thought, my brilliant brain directed my masterful, complex digestive system to assimilate and use the strawberries for fuel, to wash dishes, to write poems, to hold babies, to laugh, to give kisses. No one would completely understand or dare to finally say how my marvelous, magical, famous, fine self exists, really. I am just bottom line, a millions of years old wonder. You are too. And now let us be silent together to create an opportunity for prayer or meditation. Rise in the sea, move in the air, feeling like the shape of justice. Holy Ghost, winds set me free. Spirit of fire, come to me, come to me. I want to tell you the story of Lucy and Eric. That's E-R-E-C, not E-R-I-C. This is Lucy on the front. And this is Eric inside. Lucy lived about 2.5 million years ago. Eric lived more recently, about 2 million years ago. They're both covered with fur. Well, actually, we are too, but just not very much anymore. Lucy, even though in the drawing she's shown standing straight, actually, Lucy didn't stand straight at all. She walked on all fours, like a chimpanzee or a gorilla. She climbed very well. She almost certainly slept in trees. She didn't have fire. Eric, even though in the drawing he's shown squatting, he stood upright as we do today. And he walked as we do, and he ran as we do. And he didn't climb very well, like us. And he slept on the ground and used fire to keep away predators while asleep on the ground. Lucy and Eric had two different food processing systems. Their mouths were different, their teeth were different, their stomach was different, their intestines were different, and they looked differently from the back. If you looked at Lucy from the back, she has almost no buttocks at all, no buns, you know. And her head isn't very big. The back of her head is not very big. Eric, on the other hand, has buns. That's why he can stand up straight. That's what our buttocks do for us. They enable us to stand up straight. And the back of his head is much larger. Eric has a much bigger brain than Lucy. A biologist would say that Lucy is not human. She's not of the genus Homo. Homo is the genus of humans. She's not of the genus Homo. She's of a genus called Australopithecus. She's a cousin. Eric is a primitive human. He's of the genus Homo. He's called Homo erectus. That is the human that stands up, which is why I call him Eric. I call Lucy Lucy because her discoverer, Richard Leakey, who found her bones in the Olduvai Gorge, I think in East Africa, maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago now probably, he called her Lucy. He called her Lucy. What I'd like to explore in the sermon a little later is what happened in between. What happened in between? And of course, fire clearly is part of it, but what part of fire? And in what order did things happen? And you might say, well, what kind of a sermon is that? This sounds like a science talk. Well, it is, but I'm sure many preachers have told you the meaning of the word religion. It comes from the Latin religio, which means to bind back. And you might say, well, to bind back what? I would say to bind back our attention. Our religion is something that binds back our attention. Binds back our attention to what? to what's most important. That's what our religion is. It's something that keeps bringing our attention back to what's most important. And part of what's most important is to understand where we came from, right? The Bible begins with a story of how humans were created. Now we have a different story. We think we're evolved from something like pond scum. And it's important to know how that happened. And this thing about fire is a really important part of that. It's what distinguishes us from animals. I've been reading articles and books about evolution for, a long time. And one question that scientists keep asking is, what is it that stimulated the growth of our brains? Because that's what distinguishes us from our ape-like ancestors and our ape-like cousins today, right? The big brain, that's responsible for humanity. How did that happen? What stimulated brain growth? And there have been lots of theories. There's the theory that somehow our ancestors developed speech, and that induced enormous brain growth because language is complicated. And that never really took off very well because, of course, other animals communicate with each other and seem to be able to convey some pretty complicated messages to each other, like the way a single bee can tell other bees where the flowers are, that kind of thing. And then there was a theory that our remote ancestors developed tools, and we know that some animals actually use tools. And that somehow, once we got started developing tools, we developed them further, and somehow that induced the enormous brain growth that took place. I remember there was a proposal that for some reason we came down from the trees and learned to run, and that improved locomotion somehow induced brain growth. But zebras run, And then, well, a lot of theories have to do with fire. Well, what is it about fire then that induced the growth of our brains? Some people have said, well, fire, people say we invented fire, but of course we didn't invent fire. We came upon fires that had been started naturally by lightning probably, or if we happened to live near a volcano, you know, and it was a lava flow, that would ignite a fire. We learned to control it. That's how it started. We learned to control it, to come across a naturally occurring fire and then keep it going, and move it from place to place as we moved, so we would have it every night to start a campfire. Doing that, learning to control fire would have required a lot of cooperation. This is one theory, that how fire stimulated our brain growth. But other animals cooperate, like ants. Ants cooperate, wolves cooperate. So none of these theories really took off, but there's a new theory, new to me, that has just, well, it's captured my mind, and maybe you'll find it interesting. And it's that it's cooking that did it, right? It's cooking. It's putting fire to that particular use. Lucy's community didn't cook. Lucy on the cover there with no buns and not much of a brain. Her community didn't cook. Eric's community definitely did. Eric standing up with the big buns and the big brain. How did cooking come about? Well, just by accident, I suppose, like anything else. There was a fire and someone was eating a drumstick, say, you know, and tested it, you know, stuck it in the fire, or it fell in the fire. And somebody noticed that there was a different taste after it had been in the fire. It tasted good, and it was easier to chew. It was easier to eat. You know, I don't know exactly how it happened, but somehow with fire came cooking not long afterward. And now our bodies require cooked food. They require it. You've heard stories about experiments that scientists conduct. They get a bunch of volunteers to do something like live in a bubble for 8 months, you know, without anything coming in or going out. And well, I've read more than one account of experiment where scientists rounded up volunteers who agreed to eat no cooked food, no processed food whatsoever for a month. They got in the one I'm thinking of, there were 12 volunteers who agreed not to eat any cooked food or processed food for a month. But they could, the scientists would provide them with whatever food they wanted in whatever quantity they wanted. It just couldn't have ever been heated. So for protein, they could have sushi, but not the wrap, right? Sushi really means the rice wrapping around it. They could have the stuff inside the rice wrapping. Well, if it was uncooked fish, that is. If it was raw fish, they could have steak tartare. That's actually a delicacy. That's steak, raw. They could have dairy products. They could have nuts as much as they wanted. They could have hummus, ground chickpeas and ground tahini and a little lemon, a little garlic. I don't think that there's any cooking involved in hummus. I hope I'm right. Oh, the chickpeas have, maybe, what if you just soaked them a long time? Yeah. Anyway, no processing and Nobody made it for the whole 30 days because they were hungry all the time. They had very little energy. They were eating a lot, and of course this affected their digestive tract, which was miserable and which drove some of them out of the experiment. But the ones who were more persistent, still, despite the bowel upsets, they were hungry all the time. They were starving, literally. They all lost weight. Our bodies cannot get enough calories from just raw food. Our bodies have adapted to cooked food. We need cooked food. We can't do without it. Think about, a film you've seen of a chimpanzee or a gorilla, or animals spend almost all of their time either looking for food or chewing or laying around digesting food, almost all their waking hours. But these people in this experiment still weren't getting enough calories to sustain their weight or energy level. Our bodies have adapted. And our bodies are still adapting. How many of you never had some of your wisdom teeth? Did you miss all four or just two of them? All four? All four? Oh, you're a couple of steps up the evolutionary ladder.
I had
Oh.
I have a question. It's the most commonly missing tooth.
Yes.
Wisdom tooth. And the next most commonly missing tooth is the lateral, number 7. And my son didn't have a lateral.
Is that the one that's kind of like a spike?
No, that's a cable. It's the one between the big one and the front.
Oh.
It goes after that.
Oh, I bet you, yeah. Our mouths are evolving. Our jaws are getting smaller. Lots of us have wisdom teeth out because there isn't room for them to come in, right? It's going to cause problems. And some of us who are a step or two up the evolutionary ladder don't have them at all, or missing just two of them. So sometimes people will have the lower two will come in, but not ever the upper two, that sort of thing. Lucy and apes today, they eat raw food, but they can't take in enough calories to develop a big brain. Our brain uses 20% of the calories we take in. Our brains use 20% of the calories we take in. It's not so much that cooking stimulated the growth of the brain as cooking removed an obstacle to brain growth, right? Evolution would naturally tend to favor bigger brains. The bigger the brain is, the more successful the animal is, the more offspring it's going to have. And so a few generations later, big brains will tend to be standard. The question really is, what was holding back brain growth? And what was holding it back was not being able to get enough calories. And as soon as cooking was invented, that obstacle was removed. There's a bonus. When we learn to cook, or our ancestors learned to cook, we get a lot of free time that we hadn't had before, because cooked food can be chewed much quicker, taken in much quicker, and absorbed much quicker and more thoroughly. All those in vegetables, all those cell walls of cellulose are broken down by cooking, making the nutrients inside more quickly available. Cooking doesn't just give us more nutrients, it gives them to us much more quickly. And so as the brains were growing, our ancestors had time, free time, to think and invent tools and language and agriculture and stories and writing and the wheel and the internet. Fire is what made us human, and specifically, the aspect of fire that made us human is that it enabled us to cook. And so this, the Unitarians call that flame. It was the Unitarians who started using the flaming chalice, not the Universalists. The Universalists thought of that flame as the light of reason. Well, there's something to it. We have reason. We have these big brains, ultimately because we learned to control fire. And now for the support of this congregation and its work, the morning offering will be gratefully received and I hope freely given. And I want to remind everybody that Donald turns the camera off now, right? So there's no record of who's talking. Time for sharing joys and concerns.
Today, I have one gigantic sized joy. Yesterday, I went out to the community in New Bedford and I spoke to about 80 people who are battling three things that are major in our society, which is COVID, homelessness, and addiction. The people that I spoke to were all battling those problems that we have in society. I touched a lot of people because I told them the truth about what it feels like, because they understand it. They're going through it. I've gone through it. I just battled COVID, my heart condition, being homeless. But right afterwards, when I got done just saying a few words to all the people that were there who were looking and staring at me and being quiet and listening, one person came up to me and said, "Thank you." And I thought about it and I said, "Explain, why are you saying?" And they said, they're battling it, all those three things that are going on with their life, but they're surviving because of the help and the outreach of their community. People who are coming there and volunteers who are bringing food and clothing to the Salvation Army in New Bedford each week. And everyone is like so devoted to being there every week at 11 o'clock. And when George, the Reverend there who does this in mobile ministries, he goes there because he's a volunteer and he's a minister himself, but he commits himself with 15 other volunteers who go there because they want to give to the community. And the one person said to me that they feel so much joy and happiness every week because they're looking forward to either getting a sandwich or some water or some clothing to wear each week. And I thought about it. I was like, wow, because I was in that predicament going there, which I did yesterday. I got some pants and some shirts and some things that I needed. And it made me feel good when I left because all the volunteers that were there were doing it on their own time. And they all had smiles on their faces. They were all happy to do it. And all the people who were receiving the stuff did the same thing. They were very happy because they were walking away with something that they needed to help them survive. And I am blessed today because I feel joy that I'm able to still go out there to be a voice to help. I've been in the newspapers many a times with speaking about it. I've been at City Hall and I've just speak my mind and speak my heart to people to reach out and say, listen, this is a real big thing. It's a pandemic. I mean, homelessness is really, really gigantic around the country and around the world. But at the time when we look at our own little community, I noticed something that I was able to give. And I gave a little bit of joy, just to 80 people or so that were standing around who are battling this. And I'm so happy today that I'm able to share it with someone else and share it with you guys here at the church. God bless you all. Thank you all for listening.
I can't help but be reminded of Robert Ingersoll. I've mentioned him before. He was a guy who made a career at the end of the 19th century making fun of religion. He spent 25 years giving speeches making fun of conventional religion. And he said, the place to be happy is here. The time to be happy is now. And the way to be happy is to help other people be happy. And you just reminded me of that. Other joys or concerns or comments? Yes.
You reminded me, talking about Lucy and Eric, that there are beasts out in the wild that are called Sasquatch. I have become a believer in the existence of the Sasquatch. I've watched HowToHunt.com on YouTube and a lot of others. They have all kinds of photos, all kinds of moving pictures. And the one thing that I noticed about Sasquatch, and which is not a photo what you're talking about, is that they don't seem to cook anything. And some of them talk apparently and speak English.
So this suggests maybe they don't exist. The fact that they don't cook might suggest that they don't exist.
I don't know, it's an interesting thing, you know. Being a religious person, I get to believe in all kinds of different things, many of which are not true.
Anyone else? Yes, Al.
The only question I had during the sermon was the idea that we're not really too sure about what other species communicate with each other and how they communicate.
That's right.
And so I was kind of just thinking to myself, that's nice that we think that, and maybe that's how we evolved. Maybe in 10,000 years. I mean, now that we're feeding other mammals, cooked food, are they gonna grow? But in particular, I was thinking of like the dolphins and the whales, and the way that they speak and communicate. We haven't been able to crack that code yet. And I'm just out of scientific curiosity, I'd really be interested in seeing how they develop, because that would sort of put a little crank in that theory that you need cooked food, because I don't think fish or the mammals.
Right, maybe just peculiar to us, to our ancestry.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So maybe land mass animals.
Well, and they're learning a lot of things about octopi, which seem to have several different brains in that complicated body. Yeah.
But I don't know if octopi can communicate with each other.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyone else? Then let's sing our closing hymn, number 27, I Am That Great and Fiery Force.
Shining
May ours be a religion that, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Amen.
Okay, for the post-blue today, we'll sing a song. Well, if I knew you were coming, I'd have baked the cake. You have to understand, this was 1950. This was on the hit parade for 15 weeks and reached #1 on the hit parade in 1950. World out there in terms of the Grammys and whatever. So here we go. Okay. Well, look who's here. I haven't seen you for many a year. If I knew you were coming, I'd bake the cake, bake the cake. If I knew you were coming, I'd bake the cake. How'd you do, how'd you do, how'd you do? How'd you drop me a letter? I'd hire a band, grandest band in the land. Had to drop me a letter, I'd have hired a band and spread the welcome mat for you. Now I don't know where you came from, 'cause I don't know where you've been. But it really doesn't matter. Grab a chair and fill your platter and dig, dig, dig right in. If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake, hired a band. Goodness sake, if I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake. How'd you do, how'd you do, how'd you do? If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake, hired a band. Goodness sake, if I knew you were coming, I'd have baked a cake. How'd you do, how'd you do, how'd you do? How'd you do, how'd you do, how'd you do? Believe me, you'd rather hear me sing it than eat anything that I was attempting to bake. So. Well, and also the food thing brings up the the Gemütlichkeit, the gathering around the fire and eating together and talking. I was about to say at the last thing about joys and concerns. Got together last night with friends watching the NCAA Final Four, eating, drinking, sitting around talking or whatever, and seeing those. This was particularly North Carolina versus Duke. A couple of family members are Duke alumni. 1 minute to go in the game, it was tied. There was 18 different lead changes. Duke lost by 3. They were all great. It was, and also it was Duke's coaches, Coach K, been coaching for 47 years. This was his last game. And the North Carolina coach, this is his first year. So talk about passing on a torch. It was really something. So thank you.